Hello everyone, this video will talk you through answering 9 markers at A-Level. A 9 marker at A-Level, obviously as you'd expect, is very different to the ones maybe you've been used to doing at GCSE. A 9 marker at A-Level normally starts with one of the sort of same 3 command words. So the 3 most popular command words we see are the ones that are now going to start appearing on the screen. So the first type of 9 marker we've got really starts with the word assess. So if you're assessing in a 9 marker, you're sort of considering lots of options or arguments and you're weighing them up. Now, the whole point of weighing them up is so that you can come to a conclusion about maybe how effective they are or how valid these arguments are. The second sort of type of question we see is a to what extent. Now, with a to what extent type question, I always think it's easier to say, well, how far do you agree with something? So you're almost coming to a view or some sort of statement maybe you might be asked to write about. And if you're saying, well, to what extent or how far you agree with something, then you need to weigh up both sides again before you come to a conclusion. So that sort of leads us on quite nicely then to the final command word that you might really see with a 9 marker, and that's evaluate. Okay, so if you're evaluating again, you're considering lots of different options or maybe ideas. And again, you're sort of saying, well, in your conclusion, how important are these? How successful are these? Okay, so if those are sort of how your questions are likely to start, let's have a little look at the mark scheme, shall we? So this mark grid you might have seen in some of your lessons before, but it shows you those assessment objectives that you may well be examined on. Okay, and those assessment objectives here, look, I've just highlighted in green for you. Okay, so you're going to be marked on AO1 and AO2 in a 9 marker. So AO1 in a 9 marker is looking to see, well, have you put some knowledge in it? Do you understand the processes, so the keywords the question's asking you about? And can you start to apply that to a place? So if we think about a place for us in geography, that's likely to be a case study example. AO2 is then saying, well, can you bring all of this together? Can you bring in the figure? And then can you sort of evaluate it? Well, what's good about it? What's bad about it? Where are its successes and failures? Okay, so if you like, AO2 is going a bit above and beyond what you're already doing AO1. It's almost adding something to this information. So in the same way that we have AO1 and AO2, the mark scheme's also got 3 levels on it. So these sort of increase as we go up on the side of the mark scheme here. So level 1 is what we call basic, 2 is clear, and 3 is detailed. And obviously the marks here look, go up alongside that. So if we're thinking about, well, what does a basic 9 marker look like? It means you probably sort of maybe understood some of the keywords. You might have sort of thought a little bit about the question and done some sort of analysis that isn't really backed up with anything. If we're starting to get into this clear level, we maybe have 1 or 2 pieces of case study detail that you might have done something with. There might be some evaluation, you might have talked a little bit about the figure. So really, to be detailed, it's got to be consistent and you've got to be critical. I think being critical in A-level geography is probably one of the biggest skills you need to develop. It doesn't necessarily have to be your own opinion, but just something that you can argue for and against on. Try and avoid sitting on the fence. So at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see I've given you some sort of hints about ways that I think it's quite easy for you now to start achieving level 3. So the biggest thing I would do in any exam is think about, well, what key terms are in the question? So a highlighter is always really useful. Pick those out. Well, can you define them? Can you say what they are? If it's a process, well, can you explain a little bit about that? Think about your case study before you write the question. So maybe in the margin, jot down an example or jot down a fact or 2 that you're going to build in as part of your answer. And to help with your sort of structure in your writing, cross it off as you've used it. To build in that AO2 then, because we've talked a lot about AO1, think about really drawing it out. Well, what does things lead to? Think about consequences. Almost write your answer as if everything is like a chain reaction. So what's next? And then. So phrases like this means that are really helpful here. Can you link your arguments back to the figure? Is there evidence? And I would signpost that as well. Things like, in the foreground of the photograph, you can see this, and this links to my case study because. From the figure, it is clear that, and again in my case study, X, Y, and Z has happened. Being connected there really sort of shows that you understand things, you're able to fully interact with the question. So that would help you get into level 3. Again, that being significant and being critical is here in their AO2. I'm not going to talk too much about being critical again, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind. And last but not least, and this is the bit sometimes that trips people up, is the conclusion. Now, yes, a conclusion ideally should be there, but it doesn't need to be a massive paragraph's worth. A brief conclusion, just to sum everything up, really sort of frames your answer quite nicely. So I suppose the final thing to say to you really is thinking about your structure. So if it was me, and I've talked already about the hints for level 3, here's sort of how I'd go about laying out. Here's what my answer would look like in terms of length. So I'd almost have a brief introductory sentence that maybe defines the key word and says this is the case study maybe I'll use. I'd aim for 2 paragraphs. Now notice here I haven't put a paragraph for and a paragraph against. That's because I would do those answers as I go along. So I would weigh up both points in each paragraph. I'd try and avoid doing separate ones. If you do it sort of together, it's almost like turning a coin or turning a pancake, isn't it? Continuously flipping the argument, again shows you're able to weigh up and evaluate. And I think that's much easier to achieve the top levels doing it that way than it is doing it in separate paragraphs. But that's just my opinion. And then last but not least, I'd finish off with a conclusion. And as we said, a brief conclusion here. Okay? Notice I've put a little star that says, obviously I'm going to bring it back to the figure throughout. So I know this is only a brief video, but it's just something to help you all with planning your 9 markers and especially with your revision. If you've got any questions, please come and let me know.